Our story begins just outside of Coruscant as Anakin Skywalker and his Padawan Ahsoka Tano are returning from a 2-week-long mission in the Outer Rim, where they went undercover as separatist weapons dealers to find a hidden weapons factory. The mission was a success, and the two of them had destroyed the factory, but in these 2 weeks, the Master and the Apprentice were not allowed to have any contact with anyone outside of the mission. This included Palpatine, Padme, and of course, any other Jedi besides each other. As much as Anakin and Ahsoka enjoyed each other's company, they actually began to miss the temple beds and the food, along with the serenity and company of the Coruscant Temple. And Anakin, of course, missed Padme. And as they returned to the planet, they tried to contact the Jedi Temple, but nothing was getting through, so they just figured that their communicator was malfunctioning. But as they entered the huge city and began flying towards the temple, Ahsoka asked Anakin where the smoke was coming from. Anakin tilted his head, and he realized it was coming from the direction of the Jedi Temple. He sped up his ship, and as the temple finally came into view, both Anakin and Ahsoka felt their hearts drop in fear. The sight was terrible. The Jedi Temple was on fire, walls were falling apart, 2 of the pillars that stood high above the temple had completely fallen away. The fires were huge, and explosions still were going off all around it, and neither Anakin nor Ahsoka could muster out any words. Anakin sped their ship to a halt just outside of the temple, and the hundreds of citizens gathered around the temple yelled after them, asking what was going on. Are the Jedi okay? Was this a separatist attack? Anakin and Ahsoka had 0 answers, so they ran past the citizens, past the Coruscant security that was beginning to gather outside, and the 2 of them entered into the temple. They got inside, and both of them called out for any Jedi to find out what was going on, but there was no answer. Instead, they would find countless Jedi bodies strewn all over the floor. After a moment of pure shock, where neither of them could even move, Ahsoka ran over to a youngling she knew. Her name was Katuni, and she was among the thousands of fallen Jedi in here. And as Ahsoka turned her over, feeling no pulse, her heart sank and more waves of fear rose up inside of Ahsoka as she saw what killed her, and what killed just about every other Jedi in here: lightsaber marks. Anakin noticed it too. She looked up at Anakin with tears in her eyes, and Anakin was just shaking his head. He couldn't believe that any of this was real, and he told Ahsoka that this must have been the Sith Lord, Darth Sidious. The darkness that lived inside of Anakin was rising up as he looked around, seeing the bodies everywhere. How was this possible? Where were the clones? Where was anyone? Anakin and Ahsoka continued moving through the temple, trying to find anyone alive, and in the temple communications room, Padawan Barriss Offee was still alive. She was clawing her way to the door, barely clinging to life. Behind her, Luminara's decapitated body lay still, and Barriss would call out to Anakin and Ahsoka upon seeing them. She was missing her left arm, and both of her legs had deep cuts into them. Anakin asked frantically what happened here. Barriss barely lifted her head, and she said, "It was the Jedi. The Jedi did this." Anakin told Barriss they will get her to the medical bay. She clearly was in shock and not actually thinking straight, but Barriss just shook her head, telling Anakin and Ahsoka to stop the Jedi, or the galaxy will be doomed. And she fell dead. Ahsoka tried to wake her back up, but it was no use, and again she looked up to Anakin, asking what Barriss could have possibly meant. Anakin didn't know what to say. The Jedi were the ones that were dead. How could they have done this? But then both of them saw the security recordings console, and they knew what they had to do, despite the fear of what they may see. Anakin flicked it on, and it was worse than he ever could have imagined. Mace Windu, Yoda, Shakti, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, all of the council members were on the security camera, moving with pure power through the temple, cutting through Jedi after Jedi with no hesitation. And then they saw Obi-Wan Kenobi stab right through a group of Padawans before glaring into the camera with his yellow eyes. And Anakin just said, "It can't be. It can't be. How is it possible?" And it all began around 2 weeks ago. When Anakin and Ahsoka began their undercover mission, Mace Windu was actually sent out to the planet Harun Kal to find his former Padawan, Depa Billaba. She was sent to the jungle planet to settle a conflict between warring tribes when she suddenly disappeared, but her transponder was still active on the planet. Windu went to find her, and in his investigations that took many long days, Windu tracked Depa inside of a hidden cave underground in the Harun Kal jungle. Immediately upon entering, Windu could feel the dark side all around him, and in his desperation to find and destroy the Sith, Windu wondered if perhaps this was a secret Sith lair. So against all of his better judgment, Windu moved alone into the cave with his lightsaber ignited, and as he reached the bottom, Windu found Deppa, but she was already dead. There weren't any blaster marks or lightsaber wounds, and it was as if Deppa had the life drained from her. Windu looked to her side, and he saw an ancient lightsaber with a red crystal inside of it just laying on the ground. And as Windu saw this saber, sudden whispers of darkness began calling out to him, telling Windu to grab it. These whispers quickly became louder, until they were echoing in Windu's mind and impossible to resist, and before he ever even realized it, the Jedi Master reached down, grabbing the Sith lightsaber. And everything began to go dark as the crystal contained the spirit of Darth Anedu, a Sith from ancient legends that was overthrown by his followers and disappeared into an unknown area of the galaxy. No one in the galaxy knew that Anedu died here in this cave, and his spirit lived on in his lightsaber, waiting for a host powerful enough to accept him. Deppa Billaba grabbed the saber and was not strong enough. Her life was drained quickly, but as Windu grabbed the saber, the essence of Anedu merged with Windu, forcing itself into his mind. Windu screamed out in agony, trying to resist, but when he opened his eyes again, they were blood red and yellow. Mace Windu was still in there, but all that remained were his darkest emotions, his deep hatred for the Sith, his frustrations and anger with the Republic, his dark desire to use his power and truly take control of the galaxy were all at the front of his mind. But the spirit of this Sith was tearing Windu apart. He couldn't hold it all in alone, and so he knew what he must do. Windu grabbed the cursed lightsaber, and he left Harun Kal to go back to Coruscant, where Windu knew the rest of the Jedi powerful enough to hold this darkness without dying would be waiting. And so as Windu, now fully turned to the dark side, flew through hyperspace back to Coruscant, he called an emergency council meeting, saying he has the identity of Darth Sidious, so this meeting must be in person. All of the council members responded, saying they will be there, and Windu looked to the ancient Sith lightsaber right next to him, ready to do whatever must be done. And soon in council, Grandmaster Yoda would arrive first, and he was greatly anticipating this meeting. Before long, everyone was here. Shakti, Stas Ali, Agen Kolar, Coleman Kaj, Sazitain, Aporensis, Kit Fisto, Mundi, Kenobi, Windu, they all entered, with Windu being last. And as Windu entered, the entire council suddenly felt cold, and in a voice that was much darker than usual, Windu said that it's time the Jedi truly embrace their power and save the galaxy from itself. As a few council members stood up, wondering what was going on, Windu took the red lightsaber, floating the red crystal out of it and into the air, then shattering it with the Force. It shattered, and Windu opened himself to it as the spirit of the Sith spread like a wildfire into all of the council members here. They all fell into the floor in agony, trying to fight it off, but in minutes, they opened their yellow-red eyes, and they'd all been turned completely to the dark side. Their worst emotions were all that remained, and all they collectively wanted was to take the galaxy for themselves. No more war, no more politics. All that mattered was their power. Windu looked at Yoda, and Yoda said they must destroy any and all opposition to their power, starting with every single Jedi who is not on this council. Mundi asked what about the clones here on Coruscant, and Yoda said they are of no concern quite yet. By the time anyone hears of this attack, it will be over, and they will enact the next steps of their plan. And so, in unison, all 12 Council Jedi ignited their blades, bleeding them into an angry dark red, and they descended down into the temple below. Every corner of the temple would become unsafe for any Jedi as the turned Council members moved through its vast chambers. The thousands of Jedi in here, taken by surprise, struggled to organize any sort of defense. But against these 12, there was no resistance. The dark side hummed with each motion, amplifying their strength, making them quicker, stronger, more ruthless. The former guardians of peace and justice were now shadows in the dark, mercilessly cutting down any and all of these Jedi. A group of Jedi Padawans gathered behind Sindralik moved to investigate the commotion, only for Yoda to flip through the air and slice through the unsuspecting Drellic. The Padawans turned to run, but Plo Koon's red lightsaber cut them down now. Each fallen Jedi was a testament to their power, with their mission clear. No one can escape this night. The hallways once filled with laughter and camaraderie were now bathed in the sound of metal against flesh, hiss of lightsabers cutting through air and bone. Shakti, Agen Kolar, and Kit Fisto stood at the grand temple gates as Jedi, young and old alike, were swept away, attempts to flee being shut down. Sazyton and Coleman Cash prowled on the outside balconies, stopping any straggling Jedi trying to escape. The dark side sealed every exit, and as the last of the Jedi in the temple fell, the 12 Masters gathered at the heart of the temple, blood-red sabers casting an evil glow around them. There was no going back, and the next steps in their plan would be laid out by Windu. They must now take care of the Chancellor, and Dooku, the clone army, the droid army. Plo asked how the 12 of them can do all this, and Windu told them to close their eyes, feel the spirit, the memories of the Sith deep inside of them. There is a secret army out in the galaxy, waiting for them. And so, the 12 Jedi would leave the temple, burning, destroyed, taking the shuttle to the Republic Executive Building, just as Coruscant security were gathering at the temple to find out exactly what was going on, and the ship carrying Anakin and Ahsoka entered Coruscant. And now, we are back in the present moment, as Anakin and Ahsoka sit by the security recordings, feeling completely shocked and destroyed mentally by all of this. Anakin tried his best to clear his mind, and he told Ahsoka that this attack is all still fresh. The next move of the Turn Council would be to take down the Chancellor. Anakin and Ahsoka got into their ship, flying through Coruscant traffic. As they flew past the executive building, Ahsoka glanced at the window of Palpatine's office. She wasn't exactly sure what she was seeing, but suddenly, Ahsoka yelled at Anakin to take evasive maneuvers. Anakin listened, and he spun the ship around as many tendrils of lightning sprayed out of the Chancellor's office window at once, hitting dozens of ships flying through Coruscant. As they all exploded, crashed into buildings around the city. Anakin's ship was hit, and together, he and Ahsoka ejected, floating down onto a roof of a tall building across from the executive building. They both pulled out their binoculars and looked into the window of Palpatine's office. The lightning had stopped, but on the floor lay Palpatine's burned and broken body. The Jedi had murdered him, and Windu was deep in Palpatine's computers, as Palpatine just revealed his greatest secret to the counselors. The Council Masters had entered the office to kill Palpatine, and as it began, Palpatine had fired his own lightning, and he ignited a red saber, but it was no use against all of them. He died quickly, but his secret of being Darth Sidious was revealed, and Obi-Wan said that he may have control of the entire droid army from here if he truly is Sidious. Windu and a few others began working the files, while Plo Koon and Apple Rancis stood outside of the office, fending off the building from waves of security making their way up here. Clone troopers and Red Guards were having lightning rip through their armor, lightsabers pierced through them if they got close enough. And in the office, Palpatine's eye was used to access a secured file needing a retina scan, and now the Jedi found the access Palpatine had to the droid army, along with a way to eliminate the droid army completely. It was called Order 99, described as an order that causes the droids across the galaxy to all turn on each other. On Sereno, Dooku felt the great disturbance in the Force as the temple was slaughtered and his master was killed. He felt this darkness as if it were awakened after centuries of waiting, and he tried to contact his master to no avail. And in the skies and space above Sereno, Dooku's own defense fleet of droids began to tear itself apart, blowing itself up in space. And this would happen to the droid armies all across the galaxy. The Jedi used Order 99, and this war was coming to a sudden halt, as the battle droids were all being torn apart. Grievous was in his invisible hand ship when it all happened, and he was destroyed, along with his entire fleet, as the droids destroyed each other. On Coruscant, as the droids were doing this, the Council Jedi got back into their ship, and they took off to where the call in the Force was coming from, way out in the galaxy. There was something urging them to come to it. There was an army waiting for them. They could feel it. And so the ship took off right as Anakin and Ahsoka arrived at the executive building. Luckily, Anakin was able to throw a tracker up at the ship, guiding it with the Force to land on the Jedi ship and be activated so wherever they were going, Anakin would follow. And in the immediate aftermath of all of this, the Republic Senate gathered to address everything after Anakin went to Padme to make sure she was alright. Anakin and Ahsoka told Padme everything they knew. The Jedi Council has turned to the dark side, and they are taking the galaxy by force. The temple has been massacred, Palpatine is dead, the droid army is gone. It may seem like there is some peace, like the war is over, but Anakin said that the Jedi Council members are planning something. He can feel something dark has awakened out in the far reaches of the galaxy, but he has placed a tracker on their ship. Anakin told Padme to inform the Senate on whatever she seems necessary. and Padme asked Anakin what he will do. Anakin said he is going to rally the Jedi and the clones out in the galaxy. He will gather a fleet, and this Jedi and clone fleet will go to where he has tracked the Jedi to, and they will do what has to be done to end this. Padme couldn't believe what she was hearing, but she nodded her understanding as she went to the Senate, and Anakin and Ahsoka returned to the temple to gather the Jedi spread across the galaxy, who all just won their battles, as the battle droids destroyed each other. So as the Senate was trying to gather all of the information, Anakin sent a message to any Jedi listening. The war is not over. In fact, it may only be beginning. He told any Jedi to meet him above Coruscant, and he will take them into what will hopefully be their final battle. And so Anakin, Ahsoka, and a fleet of clones trying to grasp this new situation in this war readied themselves. Rex and the 501st were prepared, and they had Cody and the 212th with them as well. And as time went by, Jedi who were out fighting would arrive here, including Jaro Tapal, Serjunda, Quinlan Voss, Baylan Skoll, and eventually, the largest fleet of the entire war would take off to the coordinates given to them by Anakin Skywalker, the hero of the war. But out in the galaxy, darkness called. The 12 Jedi Masters, now twisted by the seductive power of the dark side, descended upon the ancient Sith world of Moraband, where the Whispers had drawn them to. Their large ship pierced through the red clouds of the Forsaken Planet, following this unseen force that beckoned them deeper into the ruins of the Sith. Their hearts had grown cold, righteous cause lost to ambition, hunger, and the promise of unlimited power. They emerged next to an ancient temple, and as the 12 approached the heart of this, the spirits of long-dead Sith stirred. And then, from the darkness, a figure emerged from his tomb. Darth Bane, spectral form towering over them, regarded the fallen Jedi with fiery eyes. He saw their corruption, their willingness to cast aside their old teachings, and in them, he saw something worthy, a power he'd waited centuries for, and Bane knew the greatest secrets of the ancient Sith could now be gifted to these dark warriors. And with a mere motion of his hand, the planet began to tremble. The ground beneath them cracked, thunderous roar splitting the air as dust and rock gave way. The 12 fallen Jedi moved away as a massive hole in the ground allowed something to begin rising from it. It was a rebuilt version of the ancient Starforge. This one was smaller than the predecessor, but still vast and terrifying, emerging from the ground, metal frame glistening with unnatural energy. The darkness that surrounded it pulsed in waves, as if feeding off the power of these fallen Jedi. Waiting for them were the Sith loyalists, generations of devoted warriors and engineers who had remained hidden and been drawn of most of their life, as it was powering the Starforge. They were tending to the fleet that now lay before them. This new forge was exactly what these fallen Jedi, now a dozen Sith, needed. It was an armada of warships, preserved through the centuries, standing at the ready. Thousands of Sith droids, designs more advanced than any in recent history, turned their glowing red optics towards their new masters, awaiting orders. This Sith Council had found their army, and they would unleash it upon the galaxy. But Obi-Wan now slightly tilted his head as he felt a familiar presence approaching. He looked at the other Sith, and he said it's him. It is the Chosen One. He's coming. Hyperspace tore open above Moraband as the Republic fleet arrived. Anakin Skywalker stood on the bridge, hands clenched, as he surveyed the space ahead. To his right, Ahsoka Tano watched with wary eyes, while Jedi Masters and Knights prepared for the combat, with their loyal clones by their side. Their fleet, composed of Venator-class Star Destroyers, hundreds of ARC-170s and V-Wings, formed a tight battle formation. They'd come here expecting a quick battle against the fallen Jedi Council. They'd prepared to face their corrupted former masters in combat, but what awaited them now was far, far worse. This new Starforge pulsed out of the planet like a living thing, and from inside of it, the Sith Council unleashed a fleet of warships unseen for millennia. Sleek, obsidian-hulled Sith battle cruisers, forged in secrecy, moved in unison with the Sith droids in control of them. On the bridge of the forge, Yoda, Windu, Oppo, Coleman, Shakti commanded the attack from here, while Plo, Obi-Wan, Sazy, Agen, and all of the others flew in with the fleet. Thousands of Sith droid starfighters, designs reminiscent of ancient interceptor models, surged forward in perfect formations. Ahsoka told Anakin they weren't ready for this. The men aren't prepared to fight this unknown enemy. But Anakin just clenched his fists and told his fleet to move in. And then, the battle erupted. Blinding turbo laser fire rained across the void as the two fleets clashed. The Jedi fleet fought with unity, Venator-class ships moving into defensive positions, while squads of starfighters spiraled into the chaos. Anakin got into his own starfighter, leading the charge, his ship weaving through the storm of laser fire as he cut down enemy droids with his blinding speed. Ahsoka followed close behind, twin cannons tearing through Sith interceptors. But this Sith fleet of droids was relentless. Plo Koon's warship, a massive Sith dreadnought, unleashed a devastating barrage upon the Resolute, forcing it to divert power to its shields. And Yoda, now a shadow of his former self, commanded his forces with terrifying ruthlessness. The Sith warships, empowered by the dark side, moved as one, overwhelming the Jedi with sheer firepower. In Anakin's comms, he heard Quinlan die as he was calling for help, and then Sayre, then Baylan, then one by one, the Republic Venators exploded as the Sith bombers got past the initial defenses. Aayla Secura's Jedi flagship took multiple hits, as Sith fighters, led by Saesee Tiin, descended upon it. Clone Commander Bly led a squadron of clones in a counterattack to save Ayla's ship, but the onslaught was far too much. Her ship's hull cracked, the bridge exploding in a fiery blaze, before the wreckage was swallowed by the void, with Bly and their men. Tip Lee and Tiplar fought desperately to coordinate the Republic fleets, but Kenobi anticipated every one of their moves. His own Sith ship cut through the Jedi lines, obliterating a cruiser in a single sweep. Kenobi's forces targeted the Jedi's command ships, reducing them to burning husks. Out in space, though, Anakin's fury turned into a realization that he had failed. He cut down wave after wave of Sith fighters, but they just kept coming. His rage was fueling his desperate attempts to turn the tide, but even he saw the truth. This was not a battle he was going to win. Ahsoka's voice crackled over the comms as she dodged enemy fire, her ship barely holding together, as she told Anakin they have to retreat. Kelleran Beck's cruiser was the next to fall, engines ripped apart by a Sith destroyer's cannons. Clone pilots, the best the Republic had to offer, were overwhelmed by the sheer number of Sith droids. Yularen's command ship suffered a fatal blow as Mundy's dreadnought struck the killing shot. The ship detonated in a massive fireball, taking thousands of clones down with it. The Republic fleet became shattered debris floating in the abyss, and Anakin looked through his ship window, seeing Obi-Wan flying overhead. Obi-Wan fired right at Anakin without hesitation. Anakin's ship erupted, descending in a fiery mess down into Moraband. Ahsoka was one of the only survivors left, and she chased after Anakin's ship as it descended and crashed hard into the ground. The Sith fleet pressed forward, forcing the remaining Republic ships into retreat, and when it was over, the Sith Council regathered on the new Starforge, preparing their plans to take the galaxy by force and create the first Jedi Empire. Down on the surface of Moraband, Ahsoka landed her ship and was now holding the dead body of Anakin Skywalker. She was the only one left. All of the Jedi were gone, including her master, and she just held Anakin here, completely defeated. But despite all of this darkness now covering the galaxy, Ahsoka remained as the one beacon of light. And from the shadows emerged a blue ghost, though. Ahsoka had never met Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, but he emerged, and he told Ahsoka that the Chosen One's time is not yet over. He still has the prophecy to fulfill. Ahsoka was confused, but angry. She yelled that Anakin is dead. The darkness won. But Qui-Gon told Ahsoka that he can and he will be reborn, and he will show her the way to do it. Sereno, as a Sith dreadnought and 2 Star Destroyers emerge from hyperspace, broadcasting the same signal that the rest of the planets around the galaxy are now seeing. The signal, created by the new Jedi Council Empire, states that the war is over. Both the Separatists and the Republic are expected to surrender to the Jedi Empire, or they will be destroyed without mercy. This Sith fleet, emerging from the new, smaller, less effective version of the Starforge, was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. Legions of ships were placed around Coruscant, Naboo, Cato Nemoidia, Moonalist, Camino, Sereno, Raxus, and many other important planets around the galaxy. On a few of them, Seleucami and Megiddo most notably, the clone armies already stationed here would rally to fight back, and battles between clones and Sith droids would take place with a council member leading the Sith droids. On Seleucami, Ki-Adi-Mundi led the droids to massacre the resisting clones, and on Megiddo, Saesee Tiin led the Sith battle droids into battle, securing the planet. And all the way back on Sereno, the Dreadnought would unleash waves of Sith fighter droids to fly through the air, and Dooku's castle was bombed and reduced to nothing. With the Separatist droid army shut down using Order 99, Sereno had no defense systems to resist this Sith invasion. And with the destruction of Dooku's castle, a statement was made that this new empire does not fear Dooku. And down in the forest, Dooku had escaped and he was still alive. And these new Imperial forces on this planet knew that Dooku was out there, so the Sith battle droids, led by Jedi Masters Coleman Kaj and Agen Kolar, were hunting down Dooku to ensure he will never again be a threat to them. And across the galaxy, Ahsoka Tano has left Moraband with Anakin Skywalker's body inside of her ship. As she flew through hyperspace, she closed her eyes and recalled everything that has happened. The Jedi Council turned without explanation and without mercy. They slaughtered the temple, killed Palpatine, shut down the droid army all in the same day. By the time she and Anakin found out about it, the Jedi Council had essentially become a Sith empire, streaking across the galaxy to uncover the secret Star Forge, the superweapon that could mass-produce ships and droids at a rate not even the Separatists could handle. And that fleet wiped out the remaining Jedi and the morale of most of the clones. Now, the galaxy was under the rule of this new Sith empire, and Ahsoka was perhaps the last hope, and she was going to give the Chosen One a new life, with guidance from a ghost from the past in Qui-Gon. Overall, very simple, she thought sarcastically, and now she was being guided to a place she'd only been once before, in order to give Anakin new life. Mortis. As she flew through hyperspace, Ahsoka closed her eyes and gave herself to the Force, asking the Force to guide her to where she needs to go. She had the daughter of Mortis inside of her somewhere from when she was reborn, and so Ahsoka called upon her presence, asking for help. And as Ahsoka gave herself to the Force, she drifted off for a while, and when she eventually opened her eyes again, Ahsoka was no longer inside of the ship. Instead, she was lying on the grass with Anakin next to her, still dead, but they were on Mortis again. The Force found her and brought them here. The father, the son, the daughter, they were all gone, but their presences lived on in the wind, rain, sun, the grass. All of it was made up by the Force itself. And soon, Qui-Gon would return, guiding Ahsoka with Anakin's body inside of a distant cave, where Ahsoka found a pool of majestic water, along with a font of water that was much more murky and mysterious. Qui-Gon was gone now, but Ahsoka understood what had to be done. It was as if the Force were whispering to her, and so she placed Anakin down between the font and between the pool, one of dark, one of light, balance as it should be, and she placed one of his hands in each of these pools. Ahsoka knelt behind Anakin, placing her hand on his head, and she repeated the phrase, "I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me," over and over again. And out beyond the galaxy, beyond time and beyond space itself, Anakin Skywalker slowly opened his eyes, seeing glimmering blue bridges, weaving between endless stars. And Anakin would look forward, seeing his mother. He immediately started to cry, apologizing to her for being too late, then saying that he failed the galaxy. And Shmi said it's alright, there's still time. Anakin went up to go and hug her, but Shmi told Anakin to wait, it's not his time to be here, quite yet. And Anakin suddenly heard echoes from beyond the Force of Ahsoka. And inside of this realm, Anakin felt new power, new knowledge, and he felt himself being lifted out of here. He told his mother that he cannot leave her again, but Shmi said that she is always with him, and she told Anakin to go be the hero he was always meant to be, with his new powers that Ahsoka is helping him achieve. In the Mortis cave, as Ahsoka continued her repeating of this phrase, the wind began to swirl around in here, mixing with more whispering from the Force, and finally, Anakin's eyes opened, and he sat up, gasping for air. He looked around frantically, and just from the feeling of this place alone, he knew they were on Mortis again. Anakin realized he had no injuries, and instead of feeling weak, he felt so much stronger. He asked Ahsoka what happened, and Ahsoka would explain everything, including the fact that Anakin was reborn here with the same pools that gave the father and the son and the daughter their power long, long ago. Anakin was still mortal, so he didn't have all of their powers, but Anakin's strength in the Force now exceeded every council member, including Yoda himself. And Anakin stood up, looking from his lightsaber and then into the horizon, and he asked Ahsoka where they go next, only for Qui-Gon to respond and tell them that they will need help, and that help is an old friend of his on Sereno. And when Anakin realized who the ghost of Qui-Gon was referring to, He almost wished he was still dead. Back on Sereno, Dooku was losing ground every minute as he was in the vast forest, but he refused to go down without a fight. He hid behind a tree as a squad of Sith battle droids moved by, and then Dooku spun into them, cutting 5 of them down before using the Force to crush a tree with lightning and throw the debris on the remaining droids. This went on for a while, until finally, Agen Kolar and Coleman Kaj got in front of him, igniting their red blades, while Oppo Rancis got behind Dooku to ignite his red blade as well. Dooku looked to all 3 of them, and he just asked how this is possible. Why has the Council turned like this? Agen snarled that they are just finally embracing their true power, claiming their rightful place atop the galaxy as Jedi. Dooku spun his blade around in his hand, saying they are no Jedi, and he prepared to defend himself. Coleman Kaj struck first, his newly bled blade spinning in, but Dooku sidestepped, his elegant form slipping past the first assault, and with a calculated swing, he severed Kaj's dominant wrist before driving his blade through the former Jedi's chest. Kaj collapsed, his eyes dimming as the Sith Lord turned to his remaining foes. Dooku smiled at them, saying he knows the darkness more than any of them, and he knows the overconfidence that it will initially bring. He pointed his blade at the Jedi, telling them that the entire Council will someday lose, and he hopes to be alive to see it. Oppo angrily unleashed a whirlwind of strikes, slithering between the trees as his saber staff clashed with Dooku. Dooku parried, but Agen Kolar lunged from the side, his saber grazing Dooku's shoulder. Pain flared through him, and before he could recover, Rancis wrapped his tail around Dooku's legs, yanking him to the ground. Dooku barely raised his saber in time, deflecting a killing blow from Kolar. The sheer force of the impact rattled his grip, and the 2 Dark Jedi now loomed over him, blades poised to end Dooku, and they swung down together, but a new blue blade blocked the strikes. It was Anakin Skywalker, and Anakin used a Force push to send both Dark Jedi flying into the trees. Dooku exhaled sharply, telling Anakin he didn't think he'd ever be happy to see him, and Anakin couldn't believe he was now fighting side by side with Dooku. Skywalker and Dooku moved in, and while Kolar and Oppo were distracting them, Ahsoka would swing down from the trees and cut through Oppo's tail. The former Jedi shrieked in pain, allowing Anakin to kill him, and then all 3 of Skywalker, Tano, and Dooku circled Agen Kolar. Agen reached out his hand, firing lightning, and Dooku met the lightning with his own, allowing Anakin to move in, and together he and Ahsoka battled Kolar, overwhelming him as Kolar died here alongside the others. But when it was over, Anakin collapsed to the ground, grabbing his head. His ears were ringing, vision going dark, as the new powers inside of Anakin were too much to control. Ahsoka told Dooku what was going on, and Dooku realized Anakin's potential, but he also realized Anakin is nowhere near ready. And Dooku smiled to himself as he felt the presence of Qui-Gon Jinn around him. Dooku knew what his new destiny was from here on out, and he told Anakin and Ahsoka that he will train Anakin to harness this power, and in time, he will be strong enough to destroy the Sith Empire once and for all. Anakin finally was able to calm down, grabbing the dirt, feeling the wind to center himself, and he said they will need to go somewhere that the Sith Empire will not look for them. Tatooine. And so Dooku would leave Sereno as he, Anakin, and Ahsoka would disappear from the galaxy to begin Anakin's new training on Tatooine so he could learn to harness his powers. Anakin was forced to leave Padme without ever saying goodbye, as seeing her would bring attention to her that the Sith Empire could exploit. It was best that the galaxy think he is dead, and Anakin knew he would see her again someday in a free galaxy. And so as the exiled training would begin on Tatooine, the Sith Council ruled the galaxy with an iron grip. Fleets of warships were patrolling the hyperlanes, ensuring that no system could rise against them. Coruscant, the former heart of the Republic, had been reshaped into a fortress of Sith dominance, and after a month, massive obsidian spires loomed atop what was once the Jedi Temple. Sith banners were draped over the Republic Senate building. The Jedi Temple had become a Sith throne, where Yoda, now dark and unrelenting, presided over his council of Sith lords. Across the galaxy, resistance would be met with swift, brutal suppression. The Sith droid army enforced order, while the Sith lords hunted down anyone opposing their rule. Mace Windu was the public face of the Sith Empire, leading planetary purges against those who dared to resist. He personally oversaw the fall of Onderon, where entire cities were razed as an example to others. Freedom fighters were executed publicly, bodies were displayed as a warning, Plo Koon, once compassionate and noble to everyone he came across, now used his mastery of the Force to manipulate the minds of planetary leaders, forcing them into submission. Under his rule, Mon Cala was enslaved, its people forced to work in shipyards, constructing more Sith warships. The aquatic planet's beautiful cities were drowned under Sith control, its king was executed for defiance, and the planets were constantly fearing the same fate. Obi-Wan Kenobi, colder than ever, led a relentless campaign against the Outer Rim. Planets that once harbored separatist ideals were brought to heel. Ryloth, long a battleground of the war, was occupied under Kenobi's rule. When Maul tried to rise up and destroy Kenobi, it was instead Kenobi that killed Maul with pure hatred. Slave markets quietly returned, under Sith approval, and any resistance cells that emerged were quickly crushed by Sith assassins. Meanwhile, Shaak Ti orchestrated the destruction of Kamino, ensuring that no more clones could be made. Tipoca City was left in ruins, the ocean swallowing the birthplace of the clone army. The millions of clones that were alive surrendered, as any fighting resulted in the loss of so many innocent lives. They gave up their armor and their weapons, and were forced into exile. Sazitin, master of space combat, used the Sith fleet to blockade trade routes, suffocating systems into more submission. Planets that refused to comply were cut off from food and supplies, slowly starving into surrender. The core worlds accepted this rule, knowing resistance was futile, and the Jedi logo would quickly become the most feared symbol in the entire galaxy. This Sith Empire used terror as a weapon, ensuring that the galaxy knew no escape, and yet in the shadows, a new hope was always beginning to grow. Padme Amidala, once a senator and a diplomat, had become something more. Leading a group of exiled clone troopers, she established the foundation of a resistance. Hiding among the shattered remnants of Republic loyalists, she orchestrated small sabotage missions against Sith supply lines and shipyards, freeing slaves, building a network of resistors. The clones, stripped of their former armor but not their will to fight, struck where the Sith were weakest. Small skirmishes broke out in key systems, but they never stayed long enough to be caught. Each victory was small, but it gave hope to those still willing to fight. Padme's grief over Anakin's death would fuel her transformation. She was no longer just a politician, and she would instead train with these clones, learning to fight, how to lead in battle. Rex, Cody, and Wolf, three of the clones that escaped the Moraban massacre, became her closest allies, guiding her in tactics. She led raids herself, and rumors of this resistance would spread, but no one knew where they would strike next. Padme's leadership gave the galaxy a small sliver of hope, though the Sith Empire hunted her relentlessly. And the Sith were not blind. They knew of the resistance, and they would not allow it to grow unchecked. It had now been a year of the Sith Council ruling the galaxy, and this resistance had grown past an annoyance, so Yoda dispatched Kenobi and Windu to track them down, while Plo Koon used the Force to foresee any movements. Every world that harbored rebels was burned, every whisper of hope crushed beneath the Sith. The Sith Empire was relentless, and no matter how hard Padme and her soldiers fought, the darkness continued to spread. The galaxy had surrendered, and the Sith made sure that none could rise against them. But on Tatooine, after this full year, Anakin Skywalker was stronger than he ever could have imagined. He harnessed the true power of the Chosen One, controlling the anger of the son, enhancing the serenity of the daughter, becoming what he was destined to be. Dooku had changed completely, seeing firsthand what the dark side could truly do to the galaxy, and this was not what he wanted. And so during this year, whenever there was time, Dooku and Ahsoka would work together to explore ways to undermine the Sith Council, and all of it would come back to the exact same answer, time and time again. The Starforge was the key, but destroying it was basically impossible with the weaponry they had access to. But as the year went on, the three of them came up with an idea. They would destroy the Sith with their own weapons, harnessing the power of the ancient Sith temple on Malachor to destroy the Starforge. So when the three of them decided it was time, they would reach out and make contact with this resistance that they'd heard about, telling them that it's time they all reveal themselves to the Sith. And Dooku laid out exactly what they have to do in order to make this work. When the resistance got this message, it was encrypted so as to not reveal who it was, but the logo that this group used when sending a message to the resistance was the exact same symbol that was engraved on Padme's necklace. So when Padme saw the message with that logo, she grabbed her necklace that Anakin gave her so long ago, and she told the resistance they can trust this group, and they will follow their lead. Anakin knew his reuniting with Padme would be coming soon, but first, he and Ahsoka would be sent out to the fourth moon of Yavin, where an ancient Sith holocron was rumored to be buried under the Grand Temple. They needed a Sith holocron in order to fulfill their upcoming plans, and so the two of them took off. And upon arriving on the Yavin moon, Anakin and Ahsoka entered the old temple built for the ancient Sith, and their presence in this place rippled throughout the galaxy. On Coruscant, Yoda felt this ripple, and the Sith Grandmaster would dispatch Stas Allie, Kit Fisto, and Saesee Tiin to find out what caused this disturbance, and take care of it. So on Yavin 4, Anakin and Ahsoka moved through layers of underground tunnels for a long time, until finally they came upon the underground tomb of Exar Kun. Dooku had told them that the holocron was inside of the tomb, as he knew this from his time as a Sith, and Anakin slowly began lifting the cover off of it to reveal the mummified corpse of Exar Kun, and inside of it was the Sith holocron. Ahsoka pulled it out, and immediately the temple began to shake and rumble, as if this were some sort of booby trap. But overall, this was a pretty standard mission for Anakin and Ahsoka, and they would escape the temple right as it collapsed in on itself, only for them to find the Sith shuttle landing in front of them as Stas Allie and Saesee Tiin emerged with their ignited red blades. Anakin told Ahsoka to go, get their ship, he will handle these Sith. And the Sith Masters Allie and Tiin held up their blades, couldn't believe their eyes, the Chosen One was alive. Tiin said that Yoda will be pleased to have Skywalker's head presented to him, and Anakin ignited his own blade, saying he never really did like either of them, and he jumped into the duel. The two of them swung at Anakin, red blades cutting through the dense jungle mist, and Anakin barely moved, deflecting their strikes with his new effortless power. When Tiin attempted to overwhelm him with a barrage of lightning, Anakin raised a single hand, using a surge of power to seize the lightning and send it right back into Tiin. It burned through the Sith Lord, and he died as Stas Allie spun back in with a desperate swing, saber slashing towards Anakin's neck, but he pivoted, his movements much quicker than hers, and with another flick of his wrist, his blade severed her weapon in two, and before she could even react, Anakin stabbed through her heart, and Stas Allie died on the cold, wet grounds next to Saesee. Anakin turned, running over to find Ahsoka, but instead he would find Sith Master Kit Fisto holding Ahsoka in a headlock with his lightsaber to her head, telling Anakin not to take another step, or she dies. Anakin put his hands up, dropping his saber, and Ahsoka closed her eyes. Fisto thought it was out of fear, but Anakin knew what she was really doing. Ahsoka connected with the animals of Yavin. It was one of her greatest powers, and as Anakin stood with his hands up, a giant bird descended from the trees, attacking Fisto. This allowed Ahsoka to roll away, and both her and Anakin used the Force to grab Fisto, holding him in place, as the animal would kill the Sith Lord, allowing the Jedi to leave Yavin with the holocron, returning to Dooku on Tatooine, and they realize now that only 6 Council Sith remain: Yoda, Windu, Kenobi, Plo Koon, Ki-Adi-Mundi, and Shaak-Ti, and they will surely all be falling right into the Jedi trap that Dooku, Anakin, and Ahsoka were ready to set up. Anakin and Ahsoka did feel bad about all of this, but Dooku told them what this must be. It had to be some sort of dark side spell, and there was no coming back. They had to eliminate them, as the Jedi parts of all of these 6 council members were already dead. And so the Resistance, led by Padme Amidala and the group of 100 exiled clones, would now do what Dooku told them to do, taking off to Malachor after being given the go-ahead signal by Dooku. But inside of this tight-knit group, there was a spy. One of the clone troopers was under the dark side influence of Windu, mind-tricked into infiltrating this group and reporting on them. This clone only got here a bit ago, but he arrived just in time to alert the Sith Council that the Resistance was taking off to Malachor. And now, the Resistance did always intend on drawing the Sith to Malachor, they just wanted to get there first and prepare. But instead, the singular Resistance cruiser would come out of hyperspace and immediately come face to face with the Star Forge. Padme felt the hope immediately drain from all of this, as her ship was being pulled into the tractor beam. But the Sith Council thought that this was it. They thought they won, and they didn't notice the much smaller ship coming out of hyperspace, flown by Anakin with Dooku and Ahsoka inside. Anakin timed his exit from hyperspace to happen deep in the planet. A risky move, but a move they had to make to go undetected, and a move perhaps only Anakin could successfully make. But as they emerged in the planet, they learned that the Resistance was captured above the Star Forge, and so Anakin knew what had to be done. He had to board the Star Forge and rescue them, rescue Padme. So he handed the Sith holocron over to Dooku and Ahsoka, and he told them to wait as long as they can before firing the super weapon here. The Sith temple in front of them had a cannon inside of it that could destroy the Starforge quickly, and the former Jedi counselors were unaware of it. Dooku learned of this from Sidious, and so Dooku and Ahsoka took the holocron as Anakin flew up to space, alerting the Forge of his fake surrender. The Sith Council was alerted that Anakin is alive and surrendering, and Windu told the droids to let him board. This was obviously a fake surrender, but the Sith wanted to ensure that Skywalker truly dies this time. And so Anakin would be allowed to enter, and he didn't waste time as he began tearing through the droids inside of its halls. He advanced towards the central prison chambers, and before him stood the 6 masters of the Sith Council, eyes burning with hatred. Yoda, Windu, Kenobi, Plo, Shakti, and Mundi surrounded him, red blades igniting as one. They moved together, their combined power enough to crush armies, but Anakin was beyond any army. The Force pulsed through him like the beating heart of the galaxy, and he met their assault with blinding speed. The darkness was unnatural, and Anakin was truly the chosen one, as these former Jedi would now learn. Mundi came first, as their blades collided in a storm of blue and red. Anakin parried effortlessly, movements refined by the Force, by his destiny, and with a surge of power, he shattered Mundi's saber and sent him crashing into a steel pillar, breaking his neck. Windu moved in, his mastery of the dark power making him strong, but Anakin met him head-on, sheer presence disrupting the Dark Lord's rhythm. Anakin twisted to block strikes from Plo and Shakti, then finishing his spin with a devastating strike that sent Windu sprawling, his own saber clattering away. Plo and Shakti attacked again in unison, agility and speed weaving around Anakin, but he was untouchable. He spun through their attacks, disarming Plo with the flick of his wrist, then impaled Shakti with a final, decisive stroke as she died on the floor. Windu, Kenobi, Plo Koon, and Yoda still stood, and they were circling around Skywalker. Back on the surface of Malachor, Ahsoka and Dooku were waiting to fire the weapon until Anakin gave them the all-clear signal, and they now fought with desperate determination as Sith battle droids swarmed the temple, more of them pouring out of the Star Forge. Blaster fire rained down on them, and for every droid cut down, another would take its place. The ancient Sith temple pulsed with raw energy, the holocron now fully activated, but they needed more time. Dooku fought with the grace of a Jedi Master, reborn from his darkness, saber carving through waves of mechanical enemies. Ahsoka and her 2 blue sabers cut down droid after droid, but the enemy was endless, and the weight of numbers was pushing them back. On the Starforge, Yoda and Windu swung at Anakin together. The small green Sith Lord unleashed a storm of dark energy, lightning crackling from his fingertips, but Anakin just absorbed it into his open palm, the raw power dissipating into a golden light that he fired back, momentarily blinding the Sith. Anakin advanced with this momentum, and Yoda leaped at him again, but Anakin caught him midair with the Force, slamming Yoda into the ground with a shattering impact, and he sliced through the Grandmaster Sith Lord to kill him. Windu was wounded, but he kept coming, launching himself forward, saber raised for the death blow, only for Anakin to sidestep and drive his blade through Windu's heart, then throwing his saber spinning through the air to cut through the neck of Plo Koon. His head dropped, and only Kenobi was left. Anakin tried to reach out to his old friend, to his brother, but it was no use. Obi-Wan was essentially dead, replaced by this pure darkness, and Anakin decided to give Kenobi some mercy, dueling him and ultimately killing Kenobi with the ultimate power radiating through him. And on Malachor, time was up. Dooku saw no other way, so with Ahsoka nearly overwhelmed, he placed his hands upon the temple's controls, channeling the last of his energy into the ancient machine. He always knew this would be a sacrifice, he just didn't tell Anakin and Ahsoka, as he was worried they would resist him doing this. The temple roared, its inner mechanisms humming with an ominous glow. The super weapon was primed, and Ahsoka could not escape in time, so Dooku pushed her off of the edge, knowing she would survive. The Sith droid surged towards Dooku, but he did not falter. He was one with the Force, and with one last defiant smile, Dooku met his end, allowing the temple to fire its unstoppable beam towards the sky, killing Dooku as it fired. Anakin felt the moment of destruction as he reached the prison chamber. With a wave of his hand, the doors tore apart, revealing Padme, Rex, Cody, and the Resistance fighters. Without hesitation, he led them through the crumbling station, cutting down the last remnants of Sith forces in their path. The Forge shuddered, its structures failing as Malachor's temple beam struck at its core. The cruiser that Anakin secured trembled as they escaped, the hangar erupting in flames behind them. As they soared into the void, Anakin watched the Starforge collapse in on itself, exploding and leaving nothing left. And across the galaxy, the Sith Empire collapsed in an instant. Every single Sith ship and Sith droid was powered by the Starforge, and without it, every Sith warship, from the massive dreadnoughts over Coruscant to the patrol cruisers over Naboo and Raxus, flickered and went dark. Their engines failed, weapons powered down, and within moments, one by one, they detonated in bursts of fire and debris. The Sith droid army collapsed where they stood, lifeless, frozen in place, connection to the Starforge severed forever. Citizens across the galaxy watched in awe as the oppressors of their worlds crumbled, their reign vanishing like smoke in the wind as Mon Cala, Kashyyyk, and Ryloth, among countless other planets, were free again. Cheers erupted in the streets, people embraced, celebrating their freedom at long last. And aboard the Resistance cruiser, Anakin stood at the viewport, watching the fading remnants of the Sith fleet as the stars stretched before him. Padme stood at his side after their long-awaited reunion, as Rex, Cody, and the surviving clones gathered around, weary but victorious. Ahsoka leaned against the console, catching her breath, a small, genuine smile forming as she looked at Anakin. The war was over, the Sith Council was no more, and now they could begin again. And with a final glance at the ruins of Malachor below, Anakin turned to his friends, as together they set their course for a new future, a future where the galaxy would heal, free from the darkness that ruled it for so long. Around 10 years later, Anakin Skywalker would stand with Ahsoka as they looked upon their new Jedi Order here on Ahch-To. They aided the galaxy as peacekeepers, as Chancellor Padme Amidala helped to restore peace to a galaxy after her role as the leader of the Resistance. The exiled clones were welcomed back if they wanted, and there was peace, as Anakin came to terms with everything that happened after fulfilling his destiny as the Chosen One. And folks, that is our long part 2. I mean, this might be like my second 30, I don't know if it's gonna like still be 30 minutes after I edit, but wow, long video. I didn't really count on this. I was like, okay, let's make this a little, like a 20-minute one, but I really enjoyed the story. So, hope you guys enjoyed both parts. I will be putting them together for a, why did I lose my train of thought? I'll be putting them both together for a separate video, where it's just a longer video. So yeah, that'll happen in a couple weeks probably, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed both parts. Let me know if you did. I decided to just go, say screw it, and just go like all mythical sort of. Anakin being reborn on Mortis, Jedi Council being turned by an ancient darkside spell, Sith super weapon blowing up Sith super weapon, like screw it, let's have fun. So we had fun, and I hope you had fun. And yeah, new video coming out in a couple days. I'll be off tomorrow, but thank you very much. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the video. No, jeez, that was bad. I don't know what that was. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.